South Africa at the United Nations Climate Change Conference. This is Democracy Now!'s exclusive week-long coverage. It's Climate Countdown. As talks begin to wrap up, youth activists hold an Occupy-style mic check, demanding world leaders agree to binding emissions cuts. We'll speak with Kate Horner of Friends of the Earth, Michael Dorsey of Dartmouth College, and the Malaysian analyst Martin Koor. Then an exclusive interview with former Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou on the financial crisis, the role of banks, and the importance of Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street movements or Occupy democracy movements in the United States are saying something very, very specific, that inequality in the end is an inequality of power, and we need to redistribute power, not just money, power, and this is, I think, the democratic challenge we have today.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from Durban, South Africa. Talks at the UN Climate Summit here in Durban have entered their last official day, with focus now on a European Union-sponsored roadmap calling for a new climate treaty to be negotiated by 2015. The treaty would impose binding cuts on the world's biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, but would not likely go into effect until 2020. The EU plan has received support from key blocs at the talks, including a coalition of small island nations and a group of the world's least developed countries. But several of the world's largest polluters, including the United States, China, and India, have refused to back the deals so far. We'll have more from Durban after headlines. Occupy Boston continues to stand after protesters defied a midnight deadline to evacuate their 2-month-old encampment. Scores of protesters remain in Boston's Dewey Park after police failed to move in when the deadline passed. The encampment's size shrunk, however, after hundreds of demonstrators voluntarily left to avoid the threat of arrest. Many of those departing the original encampment have set up a new site at Boston's Federal Reserve. Meanwhile, in Washington, a week-long protest dubbed Take Back the Capitol continued Thursday with a series of demonstrations protesting corporate influence over Congress. More than 1,000 people turned out to protest at the offices of lawmakers, including House Speaker John Boehner. Iran has filed a formal complaint after recovering a downed U.S. drone near the border with Afghanistan last week. The U.S. has acknowledged the drone was used as part of a CIA spy program that sent many drones into Iran to purportedly monitor suspected nuclear sites. On Thursday, the Iranian Foreign Ministry summoned the Swedish embassy, which handles U.S. interests in Tehran, and said the Obama administration's increased what it called, quote, provocative and covert actions. Iran's demanding the U.S. provide, quote, a full response and compensation. At a White House news conference in Washington, President Obama reiterated the long-standing U.S. threat that no option is off the table when dealing with Iran.
Are you intentionally trying to ramp up the pressure on Iran, and given that you've stated that no options are off the table, should we take that to mean that you are considering some other options?
No options off the table means I'm considering all options.
Can you tell us exactly what those options might be?
No.
The 17 members of the Eurozone are vowing to strike their own accord after a bid to change the broader European Union treaty failed. Leaders of the 27-member European Union have gathered in Brussels in a bid to tackle the sovereign debt crisis threatening the Eurozone. A proposal pushed by France and Germany to alter the EU treaty to include tighter fiscal controls failed after Britain refused to sign on. France and Germany now say they'll push for separate changes within the 17 Eurozone states. Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin has accused the United States of inciting unrest inside Russia as he grapples with massive protests. On Thursday, Putin said Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton had encouraged protests by joining in international criticism of controversial parliamentary elections. Thousands of people have demonstrated this week in a rare show of protest against Putin's rule. Speaking in Belgium, Clinton said U.S. criticism of the elections is well-founded.
We expressed concerns that we thought were well-founded about the conduct of the elections, and we are supportive of the rights and aspirations of the Russian people to be able to make progress and to realize a better future for themselves, and we hope to see that unfold in the years ahead.
The Environmental Protection Agency, for the first time, has linked the drilling practice known as fracking to polluting water supplies. On Thursday, the EPA said it had found fracking chemical compounds in the groundwater beneath a remote Wyoming community where residents have complained of contamination. The EPA has advised the residents not to drink the water. The finding could have major implications for areas around the country where gas companies are seeking state approval for massive fracking projects in shale formations. Attorney General Eric Holder appeared before lawmakers Thursday to apologize for the controversial gun sting operation known as Fast and Furious. The operation saw U.S. agents encouraging the sale of thousands of guns to middlemen for Mexican drug cartels in an attempt to gain access to senior-level figures within Mexico's criminal organizations. The Justice Department was recently forced to withdraw a letter to Congress that mistakenly stated federal agents made every effort to seize the guns before they crossed over into Mexico. Speaking before the House Judiciary Committee, Holder called the operation inexcusable.
The department has devoted significant resources to this fight, and specifically to addressing the unacceptable rate of illegal firearms trafficking from the United States to Mexico. Unfortunately, in the pursuit of that laudable goal, unacceptable tactics were adopted as part of Operation Fast and Furious. Now, as I have repeatedly stated, allowing guns to walk, whether in this administration or the prior one, is wholly unacceptable. The use of this misguided tactic is inexcusable, and it must never happen again.
Senate Republicans have blocked the nomination of former Ohio Attorney General Richard Cordray as the first head of the new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Obama picked Cordray to head the Bureau earlier this year, but Republicans have vowed to block his appointment. Obama says he hasn't ruled out making a recess appointment. Former New Jersey Governor and U.S. Senator John Corzine appeared on Capitol Hill Thursday to make his first public defense of his brief stint at the helm of the failed commodities and derivatives brokerage house MF Global. Corzine resigned from the firm last month after it filed for one of the largest bankruptcies in U.S. corporate history, with almost $40 billion in liabilities. It was the largest failure on Wall Street since the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008.
Like all of you, I am devastated by the enormous impact on many people's lives resulting from the events surrounding the MF Global bankruptcy. Of course, my distress and sadness pale in comparison to the losses and hardships that customers, farmers and ranchers and others, employees and investors have suffered. Their plight weighs on my mind every day. As the Chief Executive Officer of MF Global at the time of its bankruptcy, I truly apologize to all those affected.
A gunman shot and killed a campus police officer at Virginia Tech University Thursday before turning the gun on himself. The murder-suicide led to a 4-hour lockdown on the campus, the site of the April 2007 massacre that marked one of the worst shooting rampages in U.S. history. The Los Angeles City Council has unanimously approved a measure to support a constitutional amendment declaring that corporations are not people entitled to constitutional rights. The campaign against corporate personhood was launched in response to the Supreme Court decision on the case of Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, which opened the floodgates for unlimited corporate spending on election campaigns. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont has just put forward a similar amendment on Capitol Hill dubbed the Saving an American Democracy Amendment that would reverse the Citizens United ruling. And the funeral of Georgia anti-death penalty activist Martina Correa, the older sister of Troy Davis, will be held tomorrow morning in their hometown of Savannah, Georgia. She passed away on December 1st after a more than decade-long battle with breast cancer. Martina Correa was 44 years old. At the same time she fought to save her own life, Martina Correa struggled valiantly to save that of her brother's life, Troy Davis, who was executed by the state of Georgia on September 21st, despite major doubts about his guilt, including the recantation of 7 of the 9 non-police witnesses. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.